poison ivy is technically venomous.
Yeah, because
not
it gets
poisonous.
on your skin.
Yes.
It immediately affects.
Anyway.
We started yet?
Oh wow, we have.
Oh yeah.
I hate it when Braden does that to me.
I love when Braden does that to us.
Well, it's a good thing that this podcast is full of diverse views.
That's why I was thinking the same thing. Welcome to episode 4 of the Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up podcast. I'm Donovan.
And I'm OT.
We got a pretty good episode here, I think.
I think so too. We did a little bit of pregame this time. All the other ones were completely like, oh, we're recording. Let's start talking.
Yeah, this time we have notes and a laptop.
Ta-da.
Ta-da.
So,
Oh, actually, real quick before we go into this.
Okay.
Let us know after listening to this podcast if you like a more put together kind of where we're going off of like our notes and we have like, you know, preparation as far as what we're going to say, or if you like it better where we're just kind of talking about, you know, what we found interesting from this week, or just some things that we learned, experiences we had. Let us know what format you like better.
For sure.
Yeah, or...
Well, I think that's a great question to ask because, I mean, we've shown in the past 3 episodes that we can go into an episode pretty unprepared and just talk about things off the cuff. And that's enjoyable for us, and we're more than happy to keep making that kind of content. But if you like what you hear tonight, which should honestly sound pretty similar, but if you like it, if it's better for our listeners, then we will put in the extra work. So yeah, good point. First off, Donnie, you said that you had an interesting fact for tonight.
Yeah, so...
Welcome to Oren and Donnie's Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up Interesting Fact segment.
So my interesting fact was about Queen Elizabeth II being a licensed mechanic.
Down with the monarchy. Go on.
Yeah. But I think after our pre-show talk where we were talking about water lines...
Oh.
I think that's a way more interesting fact than the Queen Elizabeth thing.
Are you gonna poach my fact?
I think I am.
All right, go for it.
Yeah. So
we'll save the Queen Elizabeth fact as a titillating preview to another episode.
Titillating.
It just means it makes you interested in the thing.
Okay.
Dirty.
Yeah. So for the people watching on YouTube, I opened this ale 8 and it immediately froze. It turned into slush.
It was liquid before you opened it.
It was liquid before I opened it, and then I opened it, and now it is a slush of ale 8, of a late one. And so we were talking about water lines, where when water lines burst, it's not because they freeze because the ice expands and breaks the pipe. It's because...
Which you think is what it is.
Yeah,
right?
that's what most
people think. Because you've seen
think.
ice expand. When water freezes, it does expand.
It does.
And
that
so you
is
think
true.
that's what's breaking the pipe.
But when water's contained at a certain pressure, it's not going to go below a certain temperature at that pressure. So if you have like the ambient temperature outside is at, let's say, 21 degrees, the pipe inside the water inside the pipe is going to stay at 32 because that is the lowest temperature it can be at a liquid, right?
Right.
But at some point it's going to get below, and the pressure is just going to keep building and building and building until eventually it can't hold that temperature anymore.
The pressure, the pipe can't hold the water.
Yeah, it can't hold the pressure, and then it all instantaneously freezes, which thus breaks your water line.
So it doesn't slowly and gradually freeze, building pressure, thus busting the pipe.
No, and that's why it's good if you let your faucets drip whenever it's below freezing outside. It releases that pressure. So if anything, your water lines are going to freeze, but they're not going to burst.
Oh.
Because you're releasing the pressure and kind of allowing it to expand, and it could probably freeze unless you have like a pretty heavy flow, I guess. But yeah, I didn't know until I guess tonight that water lines don't just freeze and then burst. Or I guess they do, but it's not like a gradual freezing and expansion. It's a sudden boom, it's frozen, and now it's going to explode.
Because for those of you who don't know, this is fascinating. This goes back to my junior year of high school when I took environmental science. And I learned that, I was a nerd in high school. I actually enjoyed my school then. But I learned that particles and atoms, right, the things that make up everything else, when they're hot, they move around more. right? They're more active. And then when they are like a liquid, so let's say everything, this is crazy, this blew my mind. This is not my fact, but it kind of goes into this point, which is, so they're active as a gas, right? Everything, even wood, people, concrete, water, that's the common example, has a gas form, a solid form, and a liquid form, right? Or, well, I guess you should say a gas form, a liquid form, and then a solid form. And all of those are controlled by temperature, right? But those little particles inside, as a gas, they're moving around, so they're super loose and loosey-goosey, right? And so then they're really easy to mold, right? And so they don't put as much pressure on things. And then when something goes to a liquid,
it all huddles together.
It gets closer, right? But it's not so close together that it's impossible to move. It's just close enough together that it's more close together than a gas. So, right, you know, if you throw your hand through a cloud, it's a lot easier to throw your hand through than throw your hand through like water. There's a lot more resistance with water.
Right.
But then you reduce even more temperature and something turns into a solid, and then those particles and those atoms slow down almost to not moving at all. And so then that's why it becomes a solid. And I think that's fascinating because here's another little extra tip for you, and it's something that I did not know until recently, which means that my educational system failed me. But atoms are like 99.999999 lots of percentages, 9% empty space. So they're already the tiniest thing that we know exists, but the majority of what makes up an atom is empty air, like nothing. Because those little particles, those what is it, protons and neutrons?
Yeah.
But like positive and negative energy particles flying around it are so tiny that the majority of the atom, we've got the nucleus and the little particles running around it, but that isn't the majority of it. Like it's like the distance of like if the sun was the nucleus and planets were the protons and neutrons going around, or electrons, I think is what they're called. So anyway, if you guys who are listening, terrifying. Anyway, if any of you guys are big science nerds, I'm sure that to you what you just heard was a very childish understanding and explanation of neutrons and electrons and atoms, but
I need to change my britches.
that scared you that bad?
Yeah.
It just made me mad because it interrupted us. But it was scary.
Completely derailed the thought. Well, another fun fact is that shrimp, I forget what it's called, but their organs. I want it.
Okay, fine.
Their organs are free floating in blood.
What?
Yeah. I'll talk more about it next week.
Okay. If you want to hear about shrimp's organs free floating in blood, come on next week and listen. Or if you're listening to this way in the future, just start playing the next episode when this one ends.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my interesting fact is kind of to segue. Do you know what also lives in the ocean besides shrimp?
Whales.
Whales do live in the ocean. We talked about whales 2 episodes ago.
Dolphins,
which you could be nerdy and say they're kind of part of the whale family, but they're not.
They're not.
Well, they are, but they're not whales. They're dolphins. They have a specific. Hey, Braden, while I'm telling this this thing, could you tell me what family of creatures dolphins are in? I think they are all cetaceans.
I think it's. Well, what I was going to say is probably going to sound dumb. I was just say I think they're mammals.
Well, they definitely are mammals.
They're definitely mammals.
Oh, here's another interesting little tidbit. Did you know that because whales are mammals, they have hair?
Mm-hmm.
They're not just skin. Just tell me, I can't read from there, Braden.
Cetacean family.
Cetacean. Okay, so they are all cetaceans. So I wonder though, like what family dolphins are in. Our listeners don't care, but my fact is about dolphins. So did you know that pufferfish, when they are scared, puff up, right?
Yes.
Well, they also, if you get poked by them, certain species of pufferfish emit a toxic venom.
be a poison?
It would be a venom.
Oh, it would be a venom.
If you okay, here's another fun fact. Oh man, you guys are getting.
I'm
all the fun
glad
facts
we're
today.
getting into this.
So
right now.
venom, this for anyone who knows out there, venom is deadly when it is injected into your bloodstream via like a snake biting you and then injecting it into your body. That is venom. Poison is ingested. So if you eat it, it's painful. It's deadly. So get this. This may sound crazy, but if you were to swallow rattlesnake venom, you'd be fine.
I don't believe you.
Be completely fine. Because it needs to get into your bloodstream. So you could digest, because when it goes down to your stomach acid will reduce the proteins in the venom that is that tears up your muscles.
But it can't be good for you.
Well, it might not be good for you, but what I'm saying is it doesn't do what it does when it's injected into your bloodstream.
Yeah, I believe that.
Okay, now get this though. If you have an ulcer in your stomach and you have internal bleeding, and you swallow rattlesnake venom, then it will kill you because it'll get into your bloodstream.
I believe that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But so poison, you eat it. If something is poisonous, that means it kills you when you eat it.
Like a mushroom.
Like a mushroom or a poison dart frog.
Yeah.
That's not a venomous dart frog because they don't stick you with their venom.
It's not injected.
Bees, they are venomous. They are not poisonous. Poison ivy is technically venomous.
Yeah, because
not
it gets
poisonous.
on your skin.
Yes.
It immediately affects.
Anyway, so for those of you out there who are using poisonous and venomous incorrectly, now you know. Where was I? Oh yes,
The pufferfish.
the pufferfish and the dolphin. So did you know that dolphins will play with pufferfish and get this venom on them, and it gives them this like toxic neurobuzz, and they get high.
They get high off
They
of pufferfish.
they intentionally recreationally use pufferfish to get blazed out of their minds.
Pufferfish is like the weed dealer of the ocean.
Yeah, it's probably more like shrooms,
The drug
honestly. Like
dealer
they're
of the
just like
ocean.
because they see like they never eat it, right? But
Mhm.
they'll go, but partially because it's full of spines. So why would you want to eat it? But instead of just leaving it alone, because like every other normal acting animal that says, "Oh, that's hard to eat, so I'm not going to eat it," the dolphins learned that it's fun to play with, and so they'll be bouncing it with their beaks, their noses, their bottle noses, and then rubbing up against it with their faces, and then they get all like lethargic and weird.
That is crazy.
And so I can't remember. This is a YouTube fact, so I can't remember if this is what science has definitively concluded, or if they assume because of dolphin behavior before, during, and after encountering a pufferfish, they're like, yeah, it's probably the fact that they're recreationally doping themselves with pufferfish venom.
Aren't dolphins extremely similar to humans?
Well, I wouldn't call them similar to humans.
And I guess they're really smart.
They are really smart. Yeah.
And so the fact that they just
Recreationally
know this,
use
but are
drugs.
also able to communicate to each other, like, hey, this will give you this effect.
Some people say that if dolphins had thumbs, they'd supplant the human race.
Yeah.
I don't believe that because they're not created in the image of God, but
Yeah, I don't either. But
they are smart.
they're very smart. They're definitely the people of the ocean.
Yeah. The next step to them would be octopi. You know that? They're really smart.
The great escape artists.
They are. Did you know that Camden Schwarting, I'm so sorry, the last time I listened to an episode 2 with Camden Schwarting,
Alright.
and we were going on about animal facts. He was like, what's the point of this? And I was like, just keep listening. And then we kept listening, and he said, where's this going? And I'm like, nowhere, it's just animal facts.
I just want to say that platypi have no boobs.
Wow, but we know that. They are a boob.
Yes, their whole body is a boob.
I promise, dear listener, we don't have a quota for boob in every episode. Anyway, before we can
Beg
say
to
anything
differ.
else,
I'm just kidding.
I'm trying not to say
a
something we
joke.
need to edit out. All right, let's get into the meat of this podcast. So I wanted to talk about this last week, but we ended up having such a good discussion about guns and gun safety and gun rights that I didn't want to, inject a random NFL and current cultural, political, and spiritual, climate in America
Mhm.
topic. But so now we're going to talk about it now. I wanted to talk about, for those of you who watched the Monday Night Football finale between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals, you noticed, because it was impossible not to, that one of the players took a hit. It was a completely regular hit. He came up, he was on the defense. The Bills defense. He tackled the running back, took him to the ground, stood right up, and then wobbled and fell over, completely out. And so they cleared the field. The emergency staff came onto the field, and they immediately started doing chest compressions. They cut his pads off and everything, and they started doing CPR on the field. Crazy, People were just like, what the heck happened? So this player's name was Damar Hamlin, which some of you listening are going to go, yeah, duh, everyone's heard about it, but not everybody's heard about it, okay? We're not all on our phones 24/7. But this player's name is Damar Hamlin, and he, let me look this up real quick. Bear with me, dear listener.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking up the condition that they call it because I want to sound smart. There we go. All right. So,
Just cardiac arrest.
well, it is cardiac arrest, but there's something specific that it's called. I won't get into it now, but it was a heart attack. He suffered a heart attack on the field because the shoulder, like the opponent's shoulder, hit him in the chest, right? And you actually see this exact same injury has happened in the hockey league before, where hockey players have taken a puck, right to the chest, and it hits their chest and compresses their chest on their heart at just the right timing and location to basically short circuit the heart.
Knocks it out of rhythm.
It knocks it out of rhythm and turns it off.
Yep.
So that's what happened to Damar Hamlin. Super scary. Both teams were pretty shook up by it, and both coaches came to the middle of the field, had a coach conference, went back to their players, and they took them back to the locker room and said, we're done playing until we find out how our buddy is. He has a bunch of chest compressions. They load him up onto the ambulance and they rush him to Cincinnati trauma center. And they start working on him. And I remember watching that. And then the next day when I went into work, staying online, and every hour I'd refresh it because I was like, man, I really want to make sure that this guy makes it, because he was like 24 years old, 23 years old, really young. He's like first or second year in the league. And what was really cool about learning about Damar was he's seemingly anyway, from the things that his family put out and the things that he put out later on after he recovered. He's still in the hospital, by the way, but he did make he made a recovery from death. He's alive, still in the hospital. He's conscious. He's able to, communicate with his family. Whether or not he's ever going to be able to or ever wants to play football again is up for question. But one of the coolest things is he woke up and the first thing he asked the doctors was, did we win? His mind was still on the game. And so they were like, and this is what's cool, is like, nah, Damar, you won. He said, you won the game of life. you got extra time. So
you cheated death.
That's right. So that's the cool thing. And then so Damar, when the next game his team played, which was the season finale, was the next week, and he watched from his his hospital room, and he tweeted out, he said, I really wish that I could be on the field with my team right now, but God's got a bigger plan and he's using me for a different reason right now. And I thought that was a really awesome take, and I was like, man, this is somebody who really appreciates the life he's been given, and also understands that there is a power out there greater than himself that's using even his pain and hardship for a greater good. And I thought that was really encouraging to see that. And it was put out, I remember that, his tweet was aired on national football, which, so often you associate being a Christian with like being subverted and discouraged by national media.
Yeah.
But what was so interesting to me is watching the nation react to his injury, and how serious it was, because we see NFL players go through injury all the time, and we're like, man, Hope he recovers well and everything. But this is one of the first times, at least in my memory, where a player went down and his life was in question, like immediately. And everyone else was saying the same thing. And this was a national TV game, you know, so everybody was watching. They had their A team of announcers. They had their A team of sports analysts, you know, for halftime on the panel talking about all this. And so the game shuts down, but the network is still streaming it because they're not sure what's going to happen. And so there's just like this big dead space of like, how are we going to talk about this? And for those analysts, you know, and those pundits who are making all the announcements and stuff, it was a hard job. I really respected how they went about it, because it would be really easy for them to try and say something and then get canceled, you know, and everyone's like, somebody get really mad by how they're saying it. Because when you're in your lane of announcing football, that's really easy. You know, you just, not to diss on like they do their job well, but it's easy not to avoid like something that would get you canceled.
Your job is just get up there and talk about football.
Talk about football, talk about the players, talk about what they're doing, you know, how the teams are, everything. Now you've got a player who's injured and his life is in question, but they are still expected to give the people who are watching updates. And so that was really fascinating for me to watch, because I was really curious to see how they were going to handle that. And the thing that I took away from it the most was, I probably heard in that first night alone of broadcasting, may please send your thoughts and your prayers to Damar Hamlin. We are sending our thoughts and our prayers to Damar Hamlin. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. That statement, thoughts and prayers, were probably uttered 50 to 100 times. I might be exaggerating, but it really felt like within every sentence, the term thoughts and prayers was used. And I was kind of, at first, my thought was, okay, that's great. But I was like, man, America especially has this tendency to throw out the term thoughts and prayers really easily. But it's meaningless if we aren't saying pray to God, because thoughts and prayers is meaningless and it's useless if we're not praying to an almighty God who has the power to do something about it, you know? And so I was kind of frustrated in that, because I was like, man, it would be really awesome right now if one of these broadcasters, which it does put them in a tough spot, but I thought it would be awesome if one of these broadcasters would just take the time and be like, what I'd like to do, this is what's on my heart, I want to pray for Damar Hamlin, and then pray, because everyone is saying thoughts and prayers, but nobody's praying. It's seemingly like it's really easy to see. I'm sure lots of I prayed for Damar Hamlin whenever that happened. I was just like, hey, if I'm going to be judging these people for calling for thoughts and prayers and not praying myself, I better do it, you know. So I did earnestly, you know, bow my head and pray. But the next day, you know, every NFL sports show in the whole country, the only topic was Damar and his injury and his recovery and what was going on there. You know, nobody wanted to talk about football, because I'm sure there were most people who wanted to, you know, genuinely show their support for Hamlin and his family, but I'm sure, you know, the remaining people, they didn't want to risk sounding like they didn't care. And so because of that, for the next 2 days after that injury, all the sports shows just talked about Damar Hamlin. But this was a really cool opportunity, and Damar, so on, I can't remember what sports show it was, but I'm sure you could look it up on YouTube, dear listener, if you wanted to. But this broadcaster who was a quarterback in the NFL for a long time, and now he's really successful. He's probably one of my favorite like mainstream personalities. His name's Dan Orlovsky. He got up and he sat down. He did exactly what I was like hoping for somebody to do during the whole injury deal. And he sat down. And he said, "Guys, I don't know how this is going to be received, but I feel it in my soul and in my heart that this is the right thing to do." And he said, "So if you would join me, I want to pray for Damar Hamlin." And then he closed his eyes, he bowed his head, he folded his hands, and then he prayed to the Christian God in the name of God for healing and for comfort to his family and for the Lord's glory to be seen through this tragedy, and on national television. And I said, this is what the whole point of me talking about this is, one, I want to highlight Dan Orlovsky's faithfulness in his Christian faith to shine through and say, you know what, this is an awesome opportunity for me to display my faith, regardless of what the knockback would be. And who knows, maybe he did clear it with his producers before coming out and then make it seem like it was off the cuff. But I don't want to be
either way.
I don't want to be that critical.
He still would have. I mean, he still like
viewers
really
could have
put himself out there.
Yeah, viewers could have. I don't know if there's any not kickback on it, because to kick back on that, you leave yourself open to criticism of not caring about Damar.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my last point about this whole situation. There's another sports broadcaster which I don't like at all, because it's a clickbait channel. It's like they're actors who like. It's like they're given a topic that they're like, you need to have opposing views on this. It's two guys. It's called the I don't even remember what the show's name is called, but it's Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, and they sit on opposite sides of the table, kind of like you and I are. And then no matter what topic is, they just always have the opposite views, and then they argue really hard about it, and they just slander loads of people.
That sounds stressful.
It's stressful for me to watch. I'm just like, can none of you just agree that both these players are awesome? Like, why do you have to hate each other over it or whatever? But he had a tweet that said, "Man, I'm praying for Damar Hamlin," and he said, "This is really hard. I wonder how the NFL is going to handle this." And everyone, like, theoretically or online. There's an online crucifixion that happened of Skip Bayless, because it sounded like he was alluding to the fact that now the biggest point in this is still football. You know what I mean? And he wasn't. Like, if you were to read the tweet, I wouldn't actually read it before he deleted it. And it was like, it literally was, it wasn't, I wish we could still play football. It was, dang, this is a really important football game now, and it doesn't matter. It was poorly worded, sure, but that was the heart behind it.
Well, and him just saying, I wonder how the NFL is going to handle this, I think that's a genuine thing to just wonder, because, I mean, that would speak a lot about the character of the people running the NFL. And, I mean, if they handled it poorly, that would change how much I watch them or what I think of the NFL if they had handled it poorly. And it seems like to me, as little as I've looked into it, that they did handle it well.
Right.
As far as, they didn't complete that game, they were like, wow, this is something really serious. A lot of people really shook up about it.
Yeah.
We should just cancel this game. Damar is more important than a football game. And I'm glad that's the stance that they took on it. And I think for him to say, wow, I wonder how the NFL is going to handle this, that's a take that I don't think anybody else had considered yet either.
No, or at least they weren't bold enough to sound like they cared about football more than Damar.
Yeah.
And what I hated about it the most is because people were accusing Skip of something. I don't like him. I don't like the TV personality that he is, right? So, and I'm not saying that that's genuinely who Skip is. I think he's just genuinely a good actor.
Yeah.
And they hire him to have hot and bombastic takes. But I genuinely disliked the heat that he got, because I felt it was unearned. And like what he was saying was a genuine question. Like, you can ask, like, you can recognize that the game is important to the rest of the sport going on. Like, there were serious playoff implications for that team, and both those teams, and whoever won that game was going to figure a lot out in the AFC for who was going to the playoffs. And so you can say, man, with all these implications on the line, it'll be interesting to see how the NFL reacts to it while we're putting Damar first.
Right.
Like, that's not a terrible thing to ask, like you said. And but people were so quick to
I'm sure a lot of people were wondering that.
Yeah, I was like, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And you can say that, and I think it just it put me in this mindset of, we're so quick in the United States to say, okay, as a country, we are supporting this. And if we see anybody not supporting it, even if they are supporting it, but they're saying it in a slightly different way, we got to crush them and cancel them and silence them and make sure they never speak. People were calling for Skip's job
Yeah.
And I was like, his job is to say sensational stuff. I wouldn't be surprised.
And to talk about football.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I would not have... I mean, his studio would never have allowed this because they don't want to lose all of their viewers. But if they knew it wouldn't have lost them viewers, I would not have been surprised if Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp got on the next morning and then one of them disagreed that the Damar Hamlin situation was serious.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they do, you know, but people were freaking out. And I was like, maybe we just need to take a stop. This kind of harkens back to our second episode where we were talking about, like, people who disagree with you and how you react to them. Is like, man, just take a breath. And, you know, maybe someone does genuinely hold a radically different view than from you, but that doesn't mean that suddenly the right answer is to ruin their lives for it.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, and I was, this past week I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience episode with the CEO of Babylon Bee.
Oh, cool.
And kind of in that episode he's talking about how, like, satire just isn't a thing anymore.
Right.
And, you know, everything is just taken way too seriously, how we can't joke about things. And that even shows that, like not only are we not taking things seriously, or we're taking things too seriously that are to be funny, but also going to, like, where that, what was the guy's name again that you were just talking about?
Skip Bayless.
Yes. With Skip, he was saying something that was serious, but we're just looking for anything to criticize.
Yes, and I think that's what it was. Like, people saw that and they go immediately like, oh, this is somebody that's not conforming completely to our view of how the Damar Hamlin situation should be talked about, and so we're going to crucify him for it.
It's almost like I don't want to just say they. It's almost like people were waiting for somebody, just anticipating someone to slip up any little bit so that they could criticize them, and then the attention is on them.
Right.
All of a sudden, they are the victim, and they are making themselves in a better, more elevated position than somebody who hasn't even done anything wrong.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I would agree that he deserves some of the like kickback if he was saying that he cared more about the game and he was frustrated that Damar had to just go and get injured. But he wasn't saying that, you know, and so, yeah, the reaction to that was bad. But the last takeaway from this whole point that I wanted to get to is kind of I referenced it earlier, but is just, I think it's interesting to note that America as a whole, even though it doesn't seem like it on a day-to-day basis, still has a really embedded and ingrained sense of spirituality and a higher power in our culture than I think oftentimes it's perceived to be. I think like even people who identify as agnostic, or which an agnostic person believes that there was a creator, but there's no way to possibly know who that was or how it happened, or even there's no point to praying to them because they've stepped away from the situation. Like, they created Earth,
and then
sent it in, and then now
backing away. Yeah,
backing away. So there's no point to praying to that person, that God, because they're not going to intercede on your behalf.
Right.
But I, like, for instance, I was watching. This is funny. I was watching Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, and there's this one.
Why would you do that to yourself?
It was on. One of my roommates put it on, and we were like halfway through the movie, and he looked at me. He was like, "Are you invested in this at all?" And I was like, "I mean, kind of. Optimus Prime is dead, and now we got to find a way to bring him back to life. Yeah, we got to watch this."
Yeah.
Anyway, but there's this character who, when the movie ended, I was like, that is a useless character. He contributed nothing to the. But every time they were in a life-threatening situation, he was constantly shouting, "Oh God, I don't want to die. Oh God, please help me. Oh God, please!" Like over and over and over again. And I was like, see, that's interesting there, because this is not a Christian movie at all. This is not a Christian character. But like, this is his reaction. Like, when he thought he was going to die, this is what was coming out of his mouth. Not that he was even believing it, like what he was saying. Like, it wasn't that he was crying out to God for salvation in a really knowledgeable, intelligent way. This was the knee-jerk reaction. This is how it came out of his mouth, right? That's how they were portraying him in the movie. And so with this whole, when Damar Hamlin was out on the field and they were giving him chest compressions, and the reality of death was shown to the American public, it stopped us from being distracted by our day-to-day comforts and showed us that death exists, and it's a reality for all of us. And I think I think the only cultures that take atheism seriously are the cultures that can get as far away from death in their day-to-day thinking as possible. Because when you're confronted with death on a day-to-day basis, or not even a day-to-day basis, but like a regular basis, like people are dying around you from sickness or starvation. Like some of the most rigorously religious cultures are poorer cultures that have harder living conditions. And I think those people, and also cultures like that, churches in those cultures are a lot more robust because they care a lot more about their faith, because they understand how real and imminent death is.
Yeah.
And so for the American public, who is so separated from death, because we're not that we're any more separated than anybody else, but it can feel that way. We can distract ourselves from its reality. Then we're confronted with it, with Damar possibly dying on the field.
I think
everyone started praying.
Yeah.
And they didn't even realize it, but it's like, okay, when things get serious, we realize that atheism is not the answer, and there has to be more, because it's terrifying to go into the next whatever happens after death without knowing what it is and living our lives in reflection of what we believe it is.
Yeah, and I think we have so many things in America and in the American culture that distract us from the lack of hope. At least if you are, like, if you're an atheist or agnostic and you just, like, you don't know where you're going after you die, you think you're just going to go to nothing, and so they have the mentality of just living life one day at a time, living every day to the fullest, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to not distract ourselves from the fact that, everybody comes to the end of their life and will face death. And you either have hope in something or you don't have hope in something. And as Christians, we have hope, like in Jesus Christ, that through his sacrifice on the cross and giving us that free gift of salvation, that we will be with him in eternity. And I think with the Damar Hamlin situation, when that all happened, that was where everybody's attention was on. There was nothing else to distract from the fact that this man almost died.
Yep.
And so everybody is seeking hope.
Yeah, where's the hope in this? If he had died.
Where's the hope in this? If he had died, would he just go on to nothing? And no, it's like, all right, well, what can me doing, I'm worried for this guy, what can I do just sitting here?
Yeah.
And I think that's what leads people to pray and seek out just some kind of faith in something.
Because we have to grasp to something to help, because we don't want to see this guy die.
Yeah. Then
because death is scary.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but there's a missionary in our church. His name is Greg. Him and his wife serve in Africa. But I was talking to him about this a little bit, but just they're seeing so much fruit where they're at, because they're in a place where, death is very common, and, they don't have much to distract them from that fact, but it's just kind of a normal thing.
Yeah.
So if someone gives them any kind of hope, they're just going to cling to it. They don't have anything to distract them from hopelessness. And so they're just, they're sharing the truth of the gospel with people, and there's nothing deterring them from it, but like the Lord is truly just drawing people to, in that culture, to know him and to put their faith and trust in him. And they're seeing that it is leading to genuine happiness, whereas here in America, like, there are so many things that we try to distract ourselves with, but
try to find genuine happiness.
Never enough.
Yeah. It's just enough to make us want the next thing because it was really fun. Yeah. For me, a big thing for that is movies. Like, I watch a really good movie or read a good book and it's a good story. It releases all them dopamine, hits. And it's just like, this was really fun. And then I'll, like, watch the tar out of that movie. I'll watch it a lot of times.
Eventually it's not as fun.
And eventually it's not fun. And then you want the next one to come out. Yeah. And so it's like, and that's true, I think, for anything, that if you're fighting, some would say, for a more important idol, fighting for that job promotion, or fighting for that job you really want, or whatever. It's like, it's going to be awesome when you get it.
Yep.
But eventually, what's next?
Or it's like, if I only had this amount of money, then I would be happy. You get to that amount of money and you're like, Now that I have this amount of money, I think this amount of money would make me more happy, and that's not the truth.
Or once I travel to this location, or once I visit this site, or for me, like once I go and I fish and I catch this kind of fish. You know, like I went and it did the sportsman's like utopia trip and fished for an entire summer in Alaska one year. That was awesome. You know, I caught loads of salmon, loads of different types of salmon, different rivers. I saw grizzly bears, I saw moose, I hiked big mountains. And that's something that's really fulfilling for me. But now I just want to do it again. You know, like I'm not satisfied now that I've done that.
That's how I am with my AR, where it's like, all right, if I just get an AR, I'll be happy with that. And then I get it, it's like, man, this thing would be really cool with a red dot on it.
Wait, hold on. Hey, Shane Foster, listen up, because it's not just you. Okay.
And then I get my red dot, and it's like, oh, this red dot is so cool, but you know, it'd be even cooler, a magnifier.
That's right.
And then it's just...
Okay, what's next?
Adam Gardner told me whenever I got my AR that I was starting down a very, very dangerous, financially crippling path, and he was so correct.
Yeah, I know. I've got my setup, which when I decided that I really wanted to build a good fighting rifle, I said, okay, I want a rail that's free floated, not touching the barrel. I want this kind of the grip. I want this kind of stock. I want this kind of optic. I want this light, and I want this pressure pad to activate the light. Once I have that, I'm set up. That's what I want. And now I have that rifle.
And you're like, let me spray paint it camo.
That's right. So I spray painted it camo. And now I'm like, okay, I really want a suppressor. Now I'm going to put a suppressor on it.
I hadn't even thought about that.
And then after I get the suppressor, then I'm going to want night vision. And then when I get night vision, I'm going to want to put an on-gun infrared laser to shoot with passively with the night vision. And then once I get the night vision, I'm probably going to realize that the optic I have on it is trash. So I'm going to sell that optic and get an EOTech again. So I can shoot passively with my night vision and the laser. And then I'm going to get body armor. And then I'm going to get radios.
Yeah.
And it's just never ending. You know, like you can constantly get that next thing. When, you know, I can remember in high school when I drew up my dream rifle. Now I have that dream rifle. And now I'm dreaming, now I'm drawing up my next dream setup.
Now you probably know a lot more than you did.
I did. Part of that is because now it's true, I know a lot more. But it's also like, that's just, again, to illustrate, if you put your hope in a gun setup or a job or an experience, ultimately that's just distracting from the reality that we are all finite human beings that will eventually meet our death. And unless you decide that Jesus is your Lord, you will die hopeless.
And with recognizing that Jesus is Lord and putting your faith and trust in Him, as you read and study the Scriptures, you are going to experience that just wanting more-ness of Christianity, but it's going to be an increasing happiness.
Yeah.
Where it's building off each other. And I mean, obviously you're going to go through trials, but I mean, you're going to go through trials in life anyway, but are you going to go through them with or without hope? Yeah,
I was about to say, is it going to be a hopeful suffering?
Yep.
Or is it going to be a, what's the point to my pain? Yeah, that's good. Well, we just droned on quite a little bit about my point.
I'd say that we went on some pretty good healthy rabbit holes, and now all I want to do is do a rifle breakdown. So we got to do that at some point in the future.
Hey, yeah, if you guys want us to do a rifle breakdown, let us know. We're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna do it. We gotta do a pistol breakdown too. We got them displayed in the rear.
You'll have to see our setup and look at our YouTube channel. Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up on YouTube. It's the same icon as the Spotify app.
Yes, sir.
So like, subscribe, comment. All right, Donovan, what do you got to talk about? Isn't it fly fishing related?
Yeah, I've been fly fishing.
Awesome.
Just want to talk about that a little bit. What I like about it, why I prefer it over other types of fishing. Yeah, what time are we at? Come on.
We're 44 minutes in. I love it.
Yeah. So we can talk about fly fishing and wrap it up, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll see. Time's feeling pretty good, man.
Yeah, so I've been into fly fishing for probably about a year. I think it's been a year since I got my fly rod, but it wasn't
Well,
until...
so real quick before
Yeah,
so you've been into fly fishing for a year, but how long have you been fishing?
I've been fishing since I was little.
Okay, so this isn't something that you just picked up and then got into fishing through fly fishing.
No.
You've been conventional fishing for a while.
I've been into fishing, but fly fishing was just something that I didn't really care to get into until one year for Christmas. I guess I mentioned to my dad that I wanted a fly rod, and he remembered that, and I'm so glad he did because it has become one of my absolute favorite hobbies.
Awesome.
That I do. Like I was out today, just a little bit after work. I was just out there with some flies that I tied this past weekend in preparation for this time to get to go out and fish. I had my tobacco pipe out there with me.
Nice.
Was just puffing on my pipe and just by this stream, just fishing with flies that I made. And I have to say, for anybody who fly fishes out there, it is way more fun if you tie your own flies. That's another thing that I want to do on the YouTube channel is do some fly tying tutorials. But yeah, I tied a copper john, which we can get into, tied a mop fly, and just the idea of being able to go to a stream, see, or right here we're in trout country.
Yep.
See what the trout are biting at, and then have the supplies to be able to go to my truck or something where I have all my equipment and tie a replica of what they're biting at and cast into it. Oh my gosh.
Because trout are finicky, man. I mean, all fish are, but trout, it feels like maybe because of the fly game, this is highlighted. But in case you didn't realize, fish can be really picky. Like sometimes they're keyed in on eating bait fish. Sometimes they're keyed on eating a specific insect. They're not just. It's not just a case of if you throw a lure out, they're going to eat the lure. So for when you get into fishing, you realize that, okay, I've got to figure out what with the temperature of the water, the cloud cover,
humidity,
time of year,
time of day,
even, yeah.
Where the light or the direction that the light is shining into the water. Like there is so much that goes into it.
And what the fish is eating. So you have to, for fly fishermen, like the benefit is to be able to say, okay, I'm going to witness what these fish are going after, and then if you're a good tyer, you can tie an app, and then that's what for me. I don't have a lot of. That doesn't have a lot of appeal for me. Like I like catching the fish. I can understand where you're coming from.
I'll get you into it.
Maybe I do have a fly rod, and I enjoy. For me, what I have enjoyed about fly fishing, I've been getting into it recently myself, and for me, it's just been learning how to cast it. So for me, it's not so much about getting a fly that they'll eat. Like if somebody hands me a fly and say I tied this and they're going to eat it, I'm like great. But for me, what's way more satisfying is being so good with my rod that I can just lay that thing right up where I know the fish are hiding. You know, and then has seen them eat it, and just like so it's kind of the same thing where you make your fly knowing they're going to eat it, and then that's really satisfying. Me knowing that if I had not cast it there, if I wasn't able to put my fly right there, that's what gets me.
See, but I think you are missing out on like a whole different world of just thinking like the fish, and being like just making something. There's just seeing what they think looks tasty and being able to replicate that.
That's power.
And just oh my gosh, it is so cool.
Well, and it might be because I'm approaching it like a conventional fisherman, because while we're not making our own stuff, right? We're going okay. There is still the element of seeing what they're eating and seeing what time of year it is. Okay, I'm going to target it because I know this time of year, smallmouth bass, for instance, are going to be crushing crayfish and small bait fish on the bottom in rock piles. And so I go out and buy lures that represent that. But then for me, like with the conventional gear, it's all about the cast and it's all about the presentation, which are also present in fly fishing. And so maybe right now with my slow transition, the things that I love about fly fishing also relate to the things I love about conventional fishing.
Yeah.
And so the more I get into fly fishing, who knows? You might convince me that tying flies is legit.
I'm gonna try to, because I grew up just fishing with like a worm and a bobber. And so
which by the way, if you're a fisherman and you can't appreciate fishing with a bait and a bobber, you need to quit. because that is a tremendous amount of fun. Watching that bobber go down.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I always fished until I moved here and started fishing streams and just moving water and realizing a bobber is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And so just learning more about it and getting into fly fishing and then just realizing it takes so much more like technique and I feel like because of all the effort that I'm putting into, you know, tying something that I think they're going to eat and just doing anything I can to try to be smarter than the fish when I'm in the fish's element and territory. There's just so much more satisfaction that comes from catching a fish on something that I tied after spending hours dedicated to practicing the roll cast or whatever it may be. So yeah, I recommend fly fishing to anybody. There's so much fulfillment that comes with it, and it is, even though I didn't catch anything today, where it was the wrong time of day, and I just, you know, the flies that I tied today, I just looked them up on YouTube. But I mean, my flies held together, and they casted really well, had good weight, they were aerodynamic. Like it was a very fulfilling day of not catching anything, because I feel like I did what I could correctly, and I took a lot of pride in that. And it was really an art form rather than just going out and fishing to try to catch something.
Well, I think that's what's awesome about fishing too, is like, I feel like fishing is the better version of golf. Like both.
Elaborate on that a
Okay,
little bit.
just think about it. Think about it for a second. Fishing is the superior version of golf. Both involve a lot of money.
Yeah.
To get into.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to spend some money to get into the sport. And fishing is a sport. People go out to relax. Like everyone who fishes, there are very few, at least I guess I can't say there's very few people who make money off of fishing, because that still does exist, but nobody makes, well, I'd say the same ratio of people make money off of fishing as make money off of golfing. You know, you got pro golfers, but most people who go out do it for a Saturday thing. They go out for a whole day, they spend their money, and they go out and they golf. But it's frustrating. Like, how many people go out and be like, man, I lost so many balls today, man, I got a crappy score, you know, everything like that. It's hard to talk to somebody and they didn't enjoy their day of fishing. And
you're spending a whole day outside,
yeah,
which is already going to boost your mood.
On the water.
On the water, it's relaxing.
Yep.
You don't have to talk to
anybody. Golf is stressful.
It's actually, fishing is better if you don't talk to anybody.
Absolutely. Like, if you and I go out fishing, we will say very few words to each other, but we'll really enjoy it. Yeah, I think that fishing is just the better version of golf. But the reason I say that is I watched, I heard a story of somebody that was a really big golfer. But you know how there's a lot of times a lot of ponds on golf courses? He saw somebody fishing in one of those ponds.
Yeah.
And so he was having a really frustrating day on the golf course. And he went down and talked to this guy. He's like, hey, man, I used to be a golfer, but, man, you catch one of these fish and you're going to throw your golf clubs away and buy a bunch of fishing rods. And sure enough, the guy let him borrow a rod, and he was casting, a big old bass came up and smoked that. You know, he caught it, and he sure enough, he converted right away. And he said, man, I would take take committing an entire day to fishing rather than an entire day to golfing any day. And there might be some golfers out there who disagree with me who are really fulfilled by golfing, but man, going out there and finding a way to outsmart fish and catching them, even if you're just doing it to release them later, you know, it's like, that's a lot of fun. The fight is fun, being out on the water is fun, being knowledgeable enough to seek out those fish, I think, is really satisfying. So
I've spent an entire day out on a lake before and not caught anything, and did not feel like I wasted any time. I didn't feel like I wasted a day because I didn't catch anything. That seemed like a day well spent, a day of meditation, just getting to be in the Lord's creation. Yeah. And I think you can't beat it.
And I think maybe some of my country boys coming out in me, because golf courses are like synonymous with development. And, you know, to make a golf course, you kind of have to eliminate, like, it's not a natural environment. Like, people from the city it's gonna feel like a pretty natural environment because you're golfing on grassy fields. You got bodies of water around you. Typically have stands of trees.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately, honestly, it's a very unnatural environment. It's very man-made. It's very manicured. So I think I just don't like it for that reason. So.
Yeah. I've never golfed.
Me neither. I've mini golfed. And mini golf is the bomb.
I do love me some mini golf.
Some putt. Come on.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try golf one day, and then I can actually criticize it. But I don't think I'll like it.
I mean, I'm blind in one eye, and dealing with those things, dealing with ball sports, and having no depth perception because I have one eyeball that functions.
Mm-hmm.
Like ping pong, for instance, very frustrating sport for me. So I think I'm just naturally biased against something like golf.
Right.
But yeah, do you have anything else you want to talk about, Donnie?
No, I'm content.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
I just want to go back out and go fishing again.
oh, dude, we need to go fishing together.
Soon.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be warm this week.
Is it?
Like tomorrow, probably during my lunch break, tomorrow it's supposed to rain and it'll be 60 degrees at 12 o'clock.
I hate that.
So you better believe that I'm going to tie me some nymphs because that's just what the season is.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know. I need to double check that. But
I was gonna say,
a
I thought
nymph kind of resembles like an egg.
Okay.
So being like the colder season, you're not really going to see them going for any like mayflies or anything, or because nothing's hatched.
Right.
So they'll probably be going for some nymphs. So I'm going to tie a few of those tonight. Go out during my lunch break tomorrow because it'll be warmer and the trout will be more surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
And if I catch something, you'll see it on Instagram.
Heck yeah. Have you fished and done anything with clouser minnows?
I don't know what those are.
You don't know what those are?
No, I've never heard
Those
of
are like if you're going to tie a bait fish fly,
Mhm.
that is like the bait fish fly. Like people catch everything on clouser minnows.
Hmm.
And people use them for bass fishing. People use them for trout fishing. People use them for muskie fishing. And people use them in the ocean to catch tarpon and to catch tuna and to catch. Like the clouser minnow is like the jack of all trades streamer fly. And so you should look them up. I think you
I will, yeah.
Clouser minnows are awesome. They're weighted. They're a little weighted, so they have really good action. But they're typically about this big.
Okay.
And that was one of the first flies that was given to me by a buddy who really likes tying. My friend who is a listener to this podcast, Tanner Kelsey.
Tanner.
He ties musky flies and he sells them to a bait shop. Makes a lot of money off of it.
All right.
So you should. I'll put you in contact with him. I think.
Yeah. Actually, let's go ahead and move into that part of the podcast.
Yeah.
We want to invite.
Hold on. We gotta. We're gonna cut this part out because I wasn't sure where we were going with that. So you can pause it. Hold on. So we've cut all that out. So yeah, let's get into that part of the podcast.
Way to segue into it with me, Oren.
Sorry, I had no idea where you're going with that, and I wasn't sure what to say. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up. And like and subscribe. Thank you, Braden, for reminding me. Like and subscribe and share. Share this junk on Instagram. After you get into this episode, put it up on your story and say you enjoyed listening to it, or that it sucked. And well, actually, don't say that. I'm just trying to,
Well, a thumbs up or a thumbs down is better than nothing.
That's right. All press is better than no press.
Yeah.
Rate us on Spotify.
Rate us on Spotify.
Yeah.
And they hit that little notification bell.
Yeah.
so
On
you
both
can
Spotify and YouTube.
So you can stay up to date on whenever we upload stuff.
And if you want us to talk about things, we would love suggestions.
DM us on Instagram at Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up.
That's right, and we'll get back to you because we don't have a lot of people DMing us, so we will definitely see it and respond. And eventually, we're going to try and have stickers and merch. And so, if you when we get those, then we'll give you a shout out on the podcast, and we'll send those stickers to you.
I do want to say we are getting more and more people viewing each week, so
thank you so much for all of you guys for viewing,
for telling your friends and spreading the word about the podcast. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we hope you have a lot of fun listening.
Honestly, we'd probably do this if nobody listened because it's a lot of fun to make the whole process is fun. But having you guys along for the ride is just it's unexpected, honestly, the amount of people who listen, and we're now really driven to make a good show for you guys. So thank you.
Godspeed.
All right, everybody, we've gotten to that point of the podcast. You know what time it is now if you've been listening for the last 3 episodes. Now it's time to invite somebody. So, Donovan, just like we referenced in this episode, my buddy Tanner Kelsey, who lives in Hayward, Wisconsin. He is a correctional officer and a sheriff's deputy who worked for the Sawyer County Sheriff's Department. And he's a dear friend of mine. I've known him for most of my life. He actually was one of the 2 brothers who helped set up that ice fishing trip for me over Christmas. He's an awesome guy, and he ties some really awesome flies. And so we would like to invite him to Tanner. You got to get your butt down to North Carolina. I'll take you fishing. Me and Donovan will take you fishing to get on them mountain trout, and then we'll have you on the podcast.
Dude, get down here when it's warm, and we might as well just go whitewater rafting.
Yes. That'd be a lot of fun. Whitewater rafting, hiking,
Make a whole week out
trout
of it.
fishing, and podcasting. Love you guys.